There seems to be growing interest in collecting assets such as art, cars, fine jewelry, and wine. What do you attribute that to?
In discussions I've had throughout the past couple of years, particularly with investment advisors, we're finding that more and more clients and the professionals who manage their assets are looking at collectibles as an alternative viable asset class. I think that the volatility in the financial markets is pointing many clients to look at collecting not just as a hobby, but as a way to invest their assets as well.
You mentioned market volatility. Are you finding that buyers are moving away from the stock market and assessing collectibles instead?
I can't necessarily speak to their investment portfolio, but what I can say in observing our clients' collecting habits, many of our clients who in the past would have bought and sold over the course of the year tend to be buying more now and holding on to what they have.
What are some important tips for new collectors?
I'd say first and foremost is always be involved with reliable professionals. So whether it's for appraisals, for things like restoration, for transport, making sure that the persons you're dealing with can advise you properly on the objects you're collecting.
Does a standard home or car policy protect these collectibles?
Typically not, and that's usually the mistake that we find collectors make most, even on very small, modest collections. Typically a homeowner's policy, for example, will not do things like cover classes of jewelry, fine art, and wine up above a certain limit, and usually will be subject to a deductible.
Other than buying insurance, what other safeguards should collectors be aware of?
When dealing with collectibles, as I said before, clients should work with experts. So things like transit, for example, we find that the biggest cause of loss is transit and accidental breakage. So when things are being moved from a home to a storage facility or from a first home to a second home, making sure that it's packed properly and shipped properly would be terrific advice.
How can an average consumer looking to sell an asset know their property is being valued accurately?
Again, on the valuation issue, always looking to an appraiser that's qualified to appraise that particular class of items. And when it comes to selling, go to an auction house which specializes in those particular objects, whether it's automobiles, wine, jewelry, fine art.
For consumers interested in doing more research, what barometer can you point them to for any of these assets?
As you can imagine, there's always indexes being put together all the time for any number of asset classes. In the collectibles market, for example, you could look to something as broad as auction results at the two major auction houses, Sotheby's and Christie's, whose results are up 14% each last year. In the car space, there's something called the Historic Auto Group Index, which tracks the price of high-end automobile prices. Over the past 10 years, it's been up roughly 12% a year. Even something like wine, for example, sellertracker.com tracks the individual prices of wines that consumers can easily track.
Are you finding that this is a global business? Is it more, are you seeing global trends? Are there more clients that are interested overseas in collectibles versus those here in the U.S.?
It's absolutely a global phenomenon. I think I can cite one example, the wine market, for example, whereas New York used to be the center of wine auctions, it moved from New York to London, and from London moved to Hong Kong. So I think that just shows the global nature of the collecting world, and it really is truly a global phenomenon now.
This market is
stock pickers market.
Stocks have rallied this year.
We're coming into a Monday where we're going to